Welcome to Reawakening Love and Power with Carol Ann, and to this conversation with Karlyn Digitalis. Where I live in Australia, it's starting to feel very much like springtime. You can feel the hours of sunlight are increasing and it's warmer during the day. There's lots of signs of new life, little baby ducklings and other baby birds. And maybe the seasons are traveling in the other direction where you live. And Karlyn and I recorded this sitting together in my office at home before our whole state went into lockdown. One of my favorite themes of this conversation is on navigating the underworld, the times in your sexuality and in life in general when things are dark and unclear and there's no obvious path or guarantee for getting out. And I don't think I need to explain to you why that might be helpful at this point in time. Karlyn specializes in guiding folks through transformational processes, drawing upon her training in Yoni Mapping Therapy with the Bliss method, Tantric Bodywork and Sacred Sexuality, Breathwork Mastery, life coaching, yoga, and conscious birth. Her work is trauma sensitive, and the focus is on soothing the nervous system, integration of unresolved past events, and empowering people to tap into their own healing capacity. Her passion is in creating sacred sanctuary to enable people to touch the divine within and know this as their truth. With almost 20 years of experience working in the field of complementary health, she holds the space of profound kindness, understanding, and integrity. Nature and community, spiritual practice, and embodiment are the realms which nourish her the most. Keep listening to the end of this episode for 2 new offers that Karlyn has brought out into the world since we initially recorded this conversation, and a discount that she has for those of you listening. May this episode be a gentle invitation into the wonders and gifts of your pussy and the underworld. So welcome, Karlyn. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for inviting me.
I'd love to start by asking you about how you came to be a Yoni Mapping therapist. What unfolded in your path?
How long have you got?
About an hour.
Well, I was. It all started with breathwork, but that's a very long story. And then breathwork led me into birth work, led me into Tantric Bodywork and Sacred Sexuality. So it kind of started there. And I started doing Tantric Bodywork with men, but I only did that for about a year, and then it wasn't really where I was at. And that was when I was living in the UK, and then coming back to Australia, came back to live in Australia again, bringing all these other tools and things that I'd gathered along the way. Mm-hmm. And arriving back in Australia, found out I was pregnant, gave birth to my baby girl. And in the process of the birth and after the birth, as birth and motherhood often do, it completely decimated my identity.
That's why I'm scared to become a mother. Sorry, that's aside.
Luckily, I'd had lots of experience with the death of identity, so it wasn't too scary. What was scary, though, is that I completely lost everything to do with my sexuality. So it's very normal to lose your libido and your desire and your sex drive, but my whole sexual response was gone. And so I knew that wasn't quite right, that something was off with that. It was more than just the new experience of motherhood and the changes in my body from the birth. I was like, no. Anyway, so I went on a very, very deep journey into the underworld because I had I had not long before that I had this sexual awakening. So I'd only been this like sexually on fire woman for like 5 years, and now it's gone. And so, yeah, I had to go on this deep dive and try and work out what was going on, which I'll probably come back to later. But in the process of trying to find different things, another part of the story is that Bonnie Bliss, who trained us in the Yoni Mapping training, she had come back from her overseas travels at the same time, and we had landed in the same area, even though we hadn't known each other before, and we became friends and colleagues. And so she was telling me all about Yoni mapping, and that she was going to do this training, and she asked me to be the breathwork. She asked me to be one of her co-facilitators and to deliver the breathwork part, and would I like to become the Yoni Mapping therapist? And of course I jumped on that. And it was from having all these Yoni mappings that my Yoni and my sexuality and my pelvic health all started to come back online. And so being in the shadowlands of my sexuality and my Yoni and not knowing what was going on, when I had the Yoni mapping experience, she was like, this is what I wanted. This is what I need. And I was like, I was able to sink into her and go, cool, I can hear you again. I can feel you again. And so we've been on this journey. And it was the missing piece of the puzzle for me. So I'd done the Tantric Bodywork for men. I was giving the Tantric Bodywork for women too, but without any internal. And so that was a missing piece of the puzzle for me, cherry on the cake. And so and then having that experience, that added kind of wisdom of the post-birth body and Yoni and sexual journey, being able to share that with women was just amazing. So that is the condensed semi-long version of how I got into this work.
Yeah. And now I have like 10 different questions based on that.
Great.
It's funny to me how the way that things show up in our lives, and it just sometimes feels like more than coincidence, but and how often the things that we find them because we need them first and foremost, not because we're looking for the thing to share with others, but because we need it for ourselves first.
Yes, precisely. I have accepted that the way that I learn is through absolute direct experience. And I'm good with that now. Like, okay, why is this happening? This is definitely okay. This is happening for a very good reason. I'm yet to find out what it is, but I know it's going to add to my wisdom and my sharing. So now being 46, I'm like, okay, cool. I got this. I think ish.
Oh, scary words though. Every time I think I've got it,
touch wood,
the universe starts cackling.
Well, I've got it in terms of experience. I no longer go, why is this happening to me? This is, I'm just like, okay, and tapping my fingers together going, what have we here?
And it takes that, I think I'll ask first about what Yoni Mapping Therapy is to describe that. And then I kind of want to come back to the journeys in and out of the underworld, because I think when you're in the underworld or more of a winter season of your life, it's sometimes hard to trust and know that spring is coming, that this is not always the way that it's going to be. But when you've been through in and out a few times, you get a little bit more trust.
Can navigate a bit better. Yeah, and hopefully build up some tools and practices to get you through the really difficult bit. Yeah.
We'll come back to that, but could you share a little bit about what Yoni Mapping Therapy is?
Yes, so it's holistic, therapeutic, pelvic health that includes external and internal yoni massage in a nutshell. And so the way that Bonnie taught it, it really does come from a holistic therapeutic approach. So it's not just about having your yoni massaged and exploring your sexual energy and seeing if you can have better orgasms or anything that's included, but it's not the purpose. It's like it's more of a healing modality where we get to include the yoni and the pelvis into the whole being. So so it's a very beautiful experience. And even people who have a really great relationship with their yonis and with their pleasure, when it comes to someone else being the guide of that space, it's a bit like, oh, what's this? Oh, that makes me a bit nervous. And all the way through to utterly and absolutely terrified because they don't have the right information about their bodies, or they've had experiences that have disconnected them from their bodies for some reason. So, and it is a beautiful homecoming to the body and to the yoni. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful.
Have you had a yoni mapping or yoni massage before?
Not a yoni mapping in Bonnie's style, but I have had yoni massage before.
Okay,
I think maybe once with someone who was training in it, and a couple of times my partner and I have exchanged them with some instructions. A penis massage for him, not a yoni massage for him.
There is a distinction between the mapping and the massage, and I think that and every practitioner has their different take on it, and every sort of training body will have a different focus. So it's really important to find out who your practitioner is and what is their background, what's their experience, what's their vibe. So it's so particular and individual for everybody. And
I think that having that purpose to reintegrate the yoni into the whole body and to have that coming home feeling is so powerful. I was thinking before we started talking about how it actually takes a lot of energy to stay cut off from there's like energy that's bound up in keeping that part of our bodies cut off and disconnected, and that when we do reintegrate it, that there's a lot of life force that gets freed up.
Absolutely, definitely. It is like it is the center of our sexual energy, and it is one of the most, if not the most potent part of the body for that, the activation of the life force, the chi, the prana, the sexual energy, which is all one and the same, really, but that part of the body is the spot for it, which yes, it takes a lot of energy to keep it down, which is why things get a bit skew-iff and a bit off kilter when eventually, like, we might succeed for a while, but eventually you can't maintain that energy that needs to actually flow and move.
What do you see happening even in your own experience or in others when they've come home to this part of their body?
Well, there is this sense of wholeness. There is a sense of wholeness, of deep connection, of knowing, of calm, and really a sense of empowerment as well. But what I notice is that it's a gentle empowerment. It is more of this empowered knowing that, I am actually fully in my body now, and I'll decide where I go from here.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And so in saying that, I think it's so amazing that the world of sexual empowerment for women is just like gaining this momentum. It's really awesome, and it's really amazing. And in saying that as well, I think when we look out into the world, it can be quite intimidating and maybe potentially even a bit off-putting and overwhelming because as a culture we tend to wrap it up and go, this is what it looks like, and this is what you should feel like, and this is how it is, and then we all start looking up and aspiring to this way, which is it's actually so very detailed and so very nuanced and so very dependent on what our journey has been so far.
Yeah, and everyone's expression and experience of their own body and their own sexuality is going to look different. Yeah, we need a little bit more a lot more diversity out there. That's my personal opinion. Yeah, and I also wouldn't say that every practitioner in the sexual empowerment field has the kind of integrity or depth of their own journey or kind of well-rounded skill base that you would want.
Yeah, that's
so you
true.
do need discernment.
Discernment's a good word. Yeah, discernment will do you well.
Yeah, I find that in my own experience, reconnecting back to my pelvis, I tend to use the word pussy rather than yoni.
I like the word pussy as well.
Yeah,
very much.
Actually, while we're on that topic, I'm curious why. So we have no really good term in the English language that encompasses the vulva, the external genitalia, the vagina, the internal genitalia, the cervix, the womb, the whole kind of center of gloriousness. Why do you like to use the word yoni, and what other words?
For that very reason. Yeah. Because the word yoni describes the whole sexual and reproductive system. It includes everything. So for me, that's the only word that I know of that encompasses everything. And when it comes to yoni massage, we are working with the whole pelvis. The yoni, the vulva, the vagina. Obviously, we can't reach the womb, but we get close.
Well, you can, when you massage on the kind of lower belly, you're sort of not directly touching it, but impacting it, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I do a lot of pelvic massage. So that's why I'm still using the word yoni, but I love the word pussy. I just put it out there about whether I should use the word punani, and I got a heap of very different responses. But there were some people who were like, "Oh no, that's from the 90s. I've got bad memories of people, talking about punani."
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, I'll use it for fun, but yoni is still the most all-encompassing word, and I'm not fussed on the word vagina. Too clinical.
It means sheath for a sword, and that gives me the shits.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. That reason as well. But also the vagina is just a bit.
Yeah. People use the word vagina when they mean vulva. Like I like to do what I call pussycrafting, which is crafting and making representations of, I've embroidered my own vulva. I've done,
That is great.
I can show it to you later.
I would love that.
But then people will look at that and be like, oh, that's art, that's a vagina. I'm like, well, technically, you can't see the vagina. Actually, in that basket, there's can you see the crochet that on top of the pink bag? So I've crocheted this. That's meant to be a vagina, and it's starting to come out into the lips.
Oh, yeah.
That's in progress.
Fabulous. Can't wait to see the end result.
Yeah. But yeah, we do. We language is a big one, because even the word pussy or cunt or any of the other, there's a lot of words that have been used with really negative connotations. And in the process of reclaiming those words, like I've used the word pussy so many times that I have my own associations with it now.
Yeah.
But I know that other people will hear that word and it's like, ooh, oh, you know.
Yeah.
There's plenty of, it still gets used.
Yeah.
I'm not as comfortable with, I haven't fully reclaimed cunt yet, but I'm like working on it. I think that's actually one of the words that has more of a powerful etymology. Like the roots of the word are much more powerful, but especially in Australia, it gets used.
It's thrown around.
Yeah. In a not so positive way. But going back to what I've experienced, getting kind of coming home to my own body, my own pelvis, my own pussy.
Hear about that, yeah.
I feel like there's kind of a vibrancy, and like I can feel the effect of that life force being unbound.
Mm.
And I know there's times when I am more in touch with it and less in touch with it. But when I am more in touch with it, I almost feel like a little bit cheekier. But there's kind of a bolstering quality. Like
Yes.
I can be a bit bolder and care a bit less about what other people think and just feel more confident in my body. Whether, you know, aside from whatever my body looks like in the moment.
Confidence is
confidence.
a good word.
Yeah.
Yes.
And pleasure actually it's like it's good for your body. It's good for your nervous system. It's very healing and supportive in and of itself.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that energy when it is, when there's a healthy connection to it and it's able to flow freely, it is hugely healing. You know, it is the fabric of the universe, and so when we are connected to it in a healthy way, we can actually utilize it for our healing and for our health and our well-being. So, yeah, it is the trapping of that energy in different parts of the body that starts to create the discord, I suppose, and has a knock-on effect to other parts. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So how about the underworld? Because you don't go from 0 to, well, I'm at home in my pussy now, in my yoni. It takes time and navigating. And I think I'm curious to hear when you talked about that kind of underworld and the shadows that you were in after giving birth and before you found Yoni Mapping Therapy, like what was that phase like for you? And did you know at the time, at the time, could you say, oh, I think I'm in the shadows right now, but I know I'm going to come out of it?
No. No. No, I had to go through the unknown phase, which I can say now. But what it was like when I was in it was very scary. It was very grief-stricken. And it was quite lonely. I thought I was broken. I wasn't, and I felt very lost and confused because I didn't know where to go. I didn't know where to turn. So I turned to the medical system initially, 9 months after birth, and they just went, oh, just go do your Kegels and come back, and the gynecologist won't see you for 3 years anyway, so just go and do your Kegels and see how you go. I was like, oh, okay.
I feel like clenching in my heart hearing you say that.
Me too.
Like, at least if it's not your wheelhouse, just say so.
Yeah.
And refer you to someone else.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That was very frustrating. And it was very frustrating because actually what happened is, and it wasn't until 4 years later that I went, this still isn't right. I'm investigating this myself. And I found a pelvic floor physiotherapist who specialises in women and men's pelvic health. I went to see her and she went, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure there's some very significant muscle tearing in there. I'm going to refer you to a urogynecologist to have an ultrasound, and lo and behold, there was some pretty significant pelvic floor injuries, which had they been discovered earlier,
4 years.
Yes, I could have been further along the track of healing, but as it turns out, and it totally that explained why there was a complete cut-off of the sexual response, because there was actually torn muscle, so the neural pathways were broken. Yes, had to do all that discovering myself. But yeah, in terms of going into the underworld, so I felt very alone there. My husband at the time also was not able to or in the place to support my request for support. And so I felt very alone in that too. So I had requested a different kind of intimacy, which she just wasn't able to do. So I was literally just completely on my own. And in the first year of, at that point, in the first few years of being a mother for the first time, and so there's only a little bit of time I can sit there feeling sorry for myself because I had stuff to do. But there was this very underlying sorrow and being in the unknown. So being in the underworld is being completely in the dark, you know. And it's that keeping on taking just one step forward and another step forward and another step forward, and trying slightly different paths or different approaches to eventually find the way, which I did.
I'm feeling just a fraction of that sorrow and grief for 4 years.
Well, for 4 years too, and going back to what I was saying earlier, is that all through my 20s, I had my sexual awakening when I was 35 years old, and prior to that, nada, zip. I wasn't someone who masturbated. I wasn't a highly sexualized person. My first marriage was almost 12 years, and that was very loving and nurturing, but we weren't very mature sexually, so there wasn't a lot of sexual intimacy or curiosity going on. And then I had this sexual awakening, which was mind-blowing, and and I was like, oh my God, it was so amazing. It changed my life, and I became a functioning sexual being, alive in the world, and very, very content and happy. And I knew how my body worked, and I had a great relationship with my self-pleasure and my body and my yoni and my sexuality, and then my second husband and blah, 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 blah. And then overnight, gone.
And you had already been trained in birth stuff at the time too. So you were already someone who had a sense of what could happen in the birth portal.
Yes. But it usually only is a sense, because I was aware that it is, again, that's another underworld place where where letting go is necessary. And so I went in with a very good amount of knowledge and experience because I had supported 7 babies into the world. So that was really cool. But I knew that anything can happen. And yeah, what had happened is my little girl, we home birthed, and although she engaged in the right way, during labour, which was very fast, it was only 5.5 hours, she actually turned and came out face up. So she completely turned inside my pelvis and my yoni, which makes sense why everything tore. But there was, it was not picked up because of the muscles that were torn. They didn't present as anything that they could go, it's this.
Yeah.
It's a long version.
Yeah. I don't feel the urge to like rush into anything after that because I just am sitting with there's a lot there.
There's a lot of detail. Yeah. A lot of detail.
A lot of big life experience.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of big transformations and a lot of total redesigning of myself, if that makes sense. Redesigning. Yeah.
In that redesigning process, I can imagine that once you had that sexual awakening and taste that, you wouldn't want to lose it. Of course not.
No.
But an opportunity to redesign yourself is also kind of cool.
Yeah, it is. And sometimes it can only be done in a way that comes out of the blue like a lightning bolt.
Oh, man. And so you were saying before that Yoni Mapping Therapy is one of the things that really helped in that process of reconnecting to your yoni and what she needed. How did, because I also heard you say that you finally went to a doctor who helped diagnose the tearing. How did both of those things kind of work together to help you get back on the healing path?
The Yoni Mapping Therapy, the way that we were trained was to hold the yoni sacred and with reverence and respect. And that having my yoni approached like that by other beings is what was required. That energy, that space. And that's not really what she had before. Hence why when it happened, she was like, this is the thing. And then from there, it was a process of me reconnecting with her with that wisdom and acknowledging that she wasn't a maiden, a fiery, sexy, sexual, lusty maiden anymore. She was a wise woman who has had experience and who she needs things to be a certain way. And slower and more gentle and more refined because there is so much information in the subtle and in the slowness and in the gentleness.
Yes.
And so having to that in combination with the other therapeutic, the physiotherapist and the urogynecologist, they were able to say, okay, well, so you actually need these very specific exercises to do to bring the tone back in, so there was that combination as well. So it's like spirit and science coming together. Which is where
they each have their role.
They each have their role, totally. Yeah. So and it's when they work together, it's so good. It's so it really makes a big difference. So having that knowledge and that wisdom to apply physiologically as well, that has been really, really important. Yeah. So for me, on my personal journey, it wouldn't have been enough to just be like, oh, I just need to light some candles and get the oil and just gently massage and no. I needed the other things where I've got to do these specific exercises, and I need to go and see my physiotherapist. I need different, I need actual real world, whatever you want to call it, clinical support as well. It made a big difference too. Yeah.
That's the ideal, isn't it? That's really what we need, the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Working together rather than completely blind to each other.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, because we're not just bags of flesh that can be chopped up and like we are spiritual beings. We're energy beings condensed into matter. Yeah. And so, that needs to be taken into account as well as the other. Yeah.
When I heard you say the words sacred and reverence and respect, I felt almost like a little bit of tears coming to my eyes, just feeling the profound impact of that, and how, like, if anyone listening, if you can just imagine approaching your own body, your own yoni, your pussy, or having a partner approach it with that sacredness and reverence. That's very powerful and transformative, I think.
It is. Yeah, it really, really is. Yeah. And I think, taking that time to really be in awe and wonder of the human body and of our genitals and our sexuality, and taking that all into account, that makes such a huge difference, rather than thinking that if we just touch this bit and do that thing, then that's going to feel really good, and that means I'm going to do this thing and we're going to get somewhere. And I think when we approach it, at least initially, from that place of awe and beauty and sacredness and reverence, from there you can springboard into all kind of wildness, and all kind of adventures. Yeah. From there, it's a good place.
Yeah. I think those of us, particularly those of us who were assigned female at birth, our sexuality is very much sensitive and responsive to context.
Yeah.
And so I find that, like, it can be the exact same touch on 2 different days. My response is totally different.
Yes.
And it's not like, it's great to have different moves to experiment with, but it's like, I think you got to think about so much more than touch this way or use this thing, or it's really the environment, the way you feel about your body, where you are in your cycle.
Absolutely.
I'm also quite sensitive to, like, the space I'm in, if something doesn't smell good, or if I'm too cold, or if I've had a fight with my partner. Those are all, like, those hit my break. I don't know if you've read the book Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski.
I haven't.
It's one of my highest recommendations for female sexuality. She talks about how we think of sex as a drive, like you have it or you don't, but actually we really have an accelerator and we have a brake. And you can have a sensitive accelerator or a not so sensitive accelerator, and a sensitive brake or a not so sensitive brake. And different things can hit those two. You can have the accelerator and the brake hit at the same time and, like,
yeah, absolutely agreed. Yeah.
And that's also where, like, our cultural ideas, like, if you think about all of the ways that you've heard a vulva or a vagina talked about culturally, how many times would you have heard it spoken about with reverence
Exactly.
and sacredness.
Exactly. Yes.
And that creates, we take that on and that becomes like our own inner context.
Absolutely. And that's a lot of what I work with women in the Yoni mapping sessions is their relationship to how their pussy looks. Yeah. And what they've been told to believe about what a pussy should look like. So we're still dealing with that. Well, I've lost my train of thought there. Anyway, I'll come back to it. But yeah, we're still dealing with that and the negative connotations around our vulva, vagina, and how it should be touched and how it works. Yeah, so we're still there. People are just waking up now, and you know, on a regular basis, I have there's women coming in saying, "Oh, it's not very easy for me to orgasm with partner sex, and I don't know why, and I seem to take a long time, and it's a lot of effort."
Yeah,
and I'm like, it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to take 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So we're still in a process of learning all the nuances of how a yoni and a vagina work, and how it is in the body, and how it is connected to the body and our psyches and our emotional state. And that there are actually so many different layers and reasons as to why, as to how we're going to function. And there's not always a clear answer. And there needs to be a little variety and curiosity and diversity and like, oh, what have we got here?
Yeah.
You know, and we're still in this pressure-driven, goal-driven world.
Yeah.
And that's another thing about the sexual empowerment movement is that now we need to know how to squirt. We need to know how to have multiple orgasms. We need to know how to do all these magical things with our pussy now. It's just like, more pressure. So taking off the pressure.
Most pussies that I know of hate pressure.
Yes, that's
Give
right.
the big fat middle finger.
Yes.
When they get put under pressure.
Yes.
Mine included. There's like 10 things I want to say now based on what you just said. I think curiosity really is a superpower in these situations because it's got a kind of much different feeling to that pressure. And when you're curious, there's openness, and it opens you up to possibilities and to actually hearing the wisdom of your body, to exploring new things. It kind of makes it possible for you to go on the path that you need to reconnect with your body and find what it needs and what feels good.
Totally. Absolutely. Yes. I agree with that. And it's a cheesy cliche, but it is the journey, not the destination. And if we take off the pressure that it needs to end up in a certain place, or it needs to complete in a certain way, that ending has to look a certain way. I think that's a whole bunch of pressure that we can take off right there, and make more time and space for it to just be whatever it's going to be in that moment, because we are cyclical beings, and our vaginas are cyclical things, and sometimes, exactly like what you said. This morning you might have had the most amazing, epic self-pleasure session. It's so good, so expansive and connected. And then that night or the next day with the partner sex, it might just be like, this is not happening. Like, can we do something else? Or, you know, and I don't mean as in stop the intimacy, but just to change it up.
And it is like, it can be really hard when you have such a strong desire to feel pleasure and have beautiful, meaningful experiences with yourself or with your partner, it can be hard to sort of let go of what you want it to look like. It's not necessarily like you just flip a switch to get rid of the pressure.
No, that's right. No, and I think having it, understanding that intimacy isn't just about the physical connection that you have with yourself or with a partner, but intimacy is about vulnerability, and it is about going into those deeper layers. And so when the physical intimacy needs a bit of a change up, or it's not going the way we thought it was going to go, or had hoped and dreamed it was going to go, then how else can we drop into intimacy? What else can intimacy look like in that moment? So we're not left feeling like we've failed as a partner, or there's a withhold or a disconnect or a block, you know. So exploring intimacy in different ways is a good one for that.
Yeah, sometimes I have to ask my partner just to like stop and breathe with me a little bit. And it's helped me a lot. It's not something that like happened overnight, but over time in communicating, he can see now if I'm getting a bit too goal-oriented and stressed and tense and trying to achieve something. And he'll remind me to kind of breathe and soften. And when I hear that, I kind of go, oh, okay, he's not like worried about me taking time. He's okay. I don't need to worry about, the impact that this is having on him, or he'll, I can just tell him that I'm getting a little stressed and tense. I just need to stop for a minute, or those sorts of things, and being able to have that communication and have him respond to me in that way where it's okay, there's time here. That is actually really healing. And it, not every partner is necessarily going to respond like that off the bat, but the more that you communicate about it and the more that you share what it offers you when they do respond to you in that way, that can be really helpful. Do you have anything more to say on that when it comes to being with partners?
I think, the communication and the upskilling is really important. I think in long-term relationships, of course, the lusty bit and the chemistry bit at the beginning is amazing. But then when we're in it for the long term, we do need to be interested in all of the different levels and the layers of each other, so that the intimacy can be more than just the physical intimacy. So we are connected, and that might very well be going out and getting some support and doing some training to understand each other's psychology, emotions, sensitivities, and also each other's bodies. So I think there's from what I hear from the women coming in to have the Yoni mapping sessions, there's a lot of pressure on men to just know what to do. Like there is an expectation from the time that they are adolescent.
Like, did you make her come?
Exactly. Yeah. Did you make her come? And there is no proper education out there for pleasure, or even for the pleasure anatomy, or even properly for a woman's anatomy, the female anatomy, for guys to really get into and to understand in a really healthy way. Well, there's probably more now, but it's still not that great. And so there is just this expectation that they just know what to do. And there's then a whole bunch of stuff around that, around the shame of not knowing what to do, the rejection and the piss taking from their community, from their crew, from their people, from their buddies, that they don't know what to do. And so everyone just sort of makes it up as they're going along. And it can be a bit of a thing for some partners to have to go, I don't actually know what it is that you like anymore. Or what do you need now?
So, and what we like and what we need changes all the time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So being open and able to communicate, able to connect, and being open to doing something outside of the box potentially to go deeper.
Yeah, I think maybe let's talk a little bit about the role of the practitioner versus the role of what you can do for yourself, because I think both of them, that each one can do something different.
I agree.
And they're both valuable.
I agree.
Both in terms of, so maybe you can speak to being a Yoni mapping practitioner. I could speak more to the kind of coaching type of stuff that I do.
Do you want to start or shall I?
Yeah, I can. I think that the way that I approach supporting people is very much like, I'm not the one with all the answers. I create a space where I help people to connect with their own wisdom and their own answers. I find that being with a practitioner helps to kind of set the tone, and helps you to kind of helps to make it like okay to go to these places when it can be really challenging. This is one of the reasons I loved coming to your workshop last weekend with breathwork and
the
shaking. Yeah, because I know how to do breathwork, but it's different to actually go into a space and you've created the physical environment and you hold the energy and you guide the practice. And so I can just kind of sink into the current of that and be guided.
Yeah.
And I think practitioners also often have experience in other areas that maybe you haven't before. Shanti and I have also worked with a couples coach, and that really helped to create a space where it was we weren't getting as worked up at each other about the things that are kind of hot buttons.
Yeah.
It helps to have a third person there to help keep that tone and to keep us on track of like, don't get stuck in resolving all these petty little arguments. Let's actually focus on the deeper connection between you two and what's really going on here.
Beautiful.
But I also think that it's important for people, like a practitioner is going to be very supportive, but they're not going to be the one to save you.
Yeah.
Like the role that you can play for yourself is very much taking that responsibility in your own life, and when you do your own practices to connect to your own body, that's really what's going to create those new pathways and new ways of being.
Yeah, exactly.
You're the one who has all of your own answers, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Yeah. And in terms of the Yoni mapping experience, that being able to have a self-pleasure practice to take away and to enhance all the changes and the connections that have happened throughout the session is really, really, it's actually crucial, because a lot will happen, a lot will shift, a lot will change in a Yoni mapping session with me or with the guide, with the practitioner. But we will fall back into our old familiar habits if we don't have a self-pleasure practice, or a self-connection practice is what I like to call it too, that we do on a regular basis, because we do often open up new new neural pathways. We have a fresh new imprint from that experience. But then it is up to us to sustain it and maintain it. And I think that is where the therapist or the third party or the other person really helps, because and if I keep it to the Yoni mapping experience, like when we're discovering ourselves, we go on this incredible journey, but we are the doer and the receiver. So when someone else does all the work, we can just be in the fullness of the experience, and we can fully feel and participate in without having to be the doer as well. And so someone else is holding that space for us to just be there and start to create those changes at a super deep, like cellular level.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, being able to just be the receiver rather than the doer and the receiver at the same time.
So they go together really well. And I think even someone who is very, very familiar with themselves and their body and their sexuality, and they can do this and they can do that and they can take themselves here, it's really great sometimes to be held. Yeah.
It always feels like such a privilege to me to be, like you said, it's a sacred space with reverence, and to be allowed into that part of someone's life really feels like an honor to me.
It feels that way to me too. Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
What are some of your favorite pleasure practices or elements of self-pleasure that you recommend?
Breath. Breathing.
What kind of breathing?
I like to breathe a slow, full breath. So often when the pleasure is building, we tend to suck in the breath and it becomes short. And so to have that practice of actually lengthening and deepening the breath and slowing the breath down really helps to be able to move that activated sexual energy from being just located in the genitals or the pelvis to all the way through the body, all the way up the spine, the neural pathways, into the brain, out to the cosmos. So breath is one of my favorite ones. And breath, when we can use the breath like that and get used to it, we can often activate our sexual energy just with the breath, which is really cool.
Once you've kind of plugged it in.
Exactly. You've got everything's running, communicating, operating online. You can breathe and get there. And when I say get there, I mean into this state of bliss and expansion. I don't mean a certain place. And I love going really slow and without expectation. So when I first discovered about that I could give myself orgasms, it was really difficult to not just go there and have a peak orgasm. Although I would take my time and go into lots of expansive places, which I had been previously with breathwork and other experiences. So slowing it right down and going into that more kind of juicy pleasure orgasmic zone where it is very very expansive and blissful.
Yeah, you're kind of like rolling your arms around slowly.
Yeah, because it is a little bit like you're swimming in the cosmos. So going very slowly, breathing all over, body touch, and being curious and without expectation. I've learned now to not have expectations of her because of my yoni and of orgasm. And then that's my favourite spot.
Yeah,
my favourite things. What about you?
I just felt like my whole body now is going like, ooh. I think I want to do some slow breathing. Stroking my leg.
Oh my God, yeah.
I really, the slowness is both healing and delicious to me. I love having permission and space and time to go slow. And I love everything you said. I also love just bringing pleasure through my senses into my day, so that it's more, there's an experience of just like savoring my life. Like I've got a few roses on my desk over there that I bought from a neighbor, was selling them on their doorstep for like $2 a bunch.
Wow.
And I was like, I am there. And so and I smell them, I feel their soft texture. I like to look at them, and I've set one of the branches of, I guess are those rose leaves, or has she put another plant in there? Don't know.
They look like rose leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got it kind of angling out in a beautiful way that I like to look at the light through the tree out, the leaves in the tree out the window as well.
Yeah.
I always have something nice smelling around, and I often have my hands on my body through the day, like up and down my legs, or massaging my lower belly, or resting my hand on my chest. Just those moments of savoring simple goodness. Yeah. I'm very sensually oriented.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. You live a sensual life. So, and living a sensual life doesn't mean that you're in orgasmic bliss 24 hours a day.
I'm not.
No, me either. But you have beauty around you that delights your senses all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, and makes it a pleasure to be alive.
Yeah. Yes. Because why else are we here?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So tell us about where people can find you, what your offerings are, and then I have one more question for you at the end.
Okay. So I'm on the usual socials, Facebook and Instagram. So Karlyn Digitalis on Facebook, and The Erotic Alchemist on Instagram, and sacredalchemy.com.au is my website, and all the details are there. So I mostly work from northern New South Wales to do the Yoni mapping and breath work, but I also travel to Tasmania, Melbourne, and the Sunshine Coast when I'm able to. And yeah, I offer workshops, and I'm just getting to grips with running the online stuff soon. So that's how I can be contacted and connected with. And I'm always up for chats and connections. So anyone can reach out with questions or curiosities, and I'm really happy to respond.
Beautiful. I'll put those links in the episode description for people to find.
Thanks.
And my last question is, if there was one thing that you would want people to take away from this conversation, like what's one thing that you really want to hit home?
That, I guess that it's another classic quote. I'm not sure whose it is, but no feeling is final. So no matter where you are at your journey of self-awareness or self-discovery of your pleasure and your pussy and your sexual expression, or even just your connection to yourself, just keep going, don't give up. Because wherever you're at right now is going to change soon, and there are places to go information to be had and people to see that will support you. So yeah, sometimes we just need to be where we're at, and it's okay, and for that to be okay. Yeah.
Yes, I completely agree. I think I would like people to take away the promise of joy and life that is sitting in your body, just waiting for you to come home to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's right here, like it's here.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
You don't have to, You don't have to get something from outside and install it. It's just waiting inside you to be revealed.
Absolutely. And in addition to that, I would say I've worked with a lot of people who have had trauma and complex trauma. And that is true. So underneath these experiences, or interweaved into these experiences that maybe have left us feeling disconnected or confused, there is connection is still there. It's just finding the way, you know, and that, there is, you can definitely move through these experiences, and the new ones will replace the old information, and that old information will become irrelevant, or be able to be integrated so that it is life enhancing.
Yes to that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your time and your energy and your story.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and it's been a very delightful pleasure to be here, hanging out with you, having a cup of tea and a chat.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're here, listening to Reawakening Love and Power with Karlyn. Links to Karlyn's and my websites and social media are in the episode description. Since we recorded this conversation, Karlyn has also developed 2 new offerings as well. Pathways to Pleasure is a live 5-week online course to step into the exquisite domain of your sensual landscape and rewrite the script of your erotic expression. As a listener of this podcast, you qualify for $50 off the course. Just DM Karlyn for the details. She's also offering a Pathways to Pleasure Real Talk for Teens, an online workshop for teens to explore their questions and curiosities around sex, love, relationships, body function, self-confidence, and respect. If I had a teen, I would absolutely be sending them her way. And I support women to feel at home in their bodies and their sensual sexual nature. If you're resonating with me, you're welcome to book a free clarity call through my website, carolann.com.au, and we can talk about what's going on for you and what support could look like, with no pressure or obligation to sign up. I also work with people who are experiencing anxiety and stress and are generally wanting to feel more grounded and more just like themselves in their daily lives. And you can also connect with me on Instagram at CarolAnnAlive. May this episode be a gentle invitation into the wonders and gifts of your pussy and the underworld.